My boyfriend and I were visiting my parents back in Michigan for a few days, and we didn't want to stay with them before, let's just say, obvious reasons. We ended up finding an Airbnb about 15 minutes away from their house. A cute little one-bedroom condo. The inside was completely redone, was very modern, so it wasn't the cheapest. The hosts seemed nice and had good ratings, but we did see a few comments that raised some red flags. Most of the negative comments mentioned strange experiences with the neighbor. No, I've had some crazy neighbors, so I'm not one to judge. I simply brought it up with the host before booking, and she stated her neighbor is nosy, and sometimes when people try to get into the Airbnb, she gets defensive, but she said she'll let the neighbor know we're staying and what we look like, so everything should be fine. On the day we arrived, everything went smoothly. We met the host who lived nearby, and she gave us the key to the entry door and the code to the actual apartment. We unpacked all of our stuff and then headed over to my parents for dinner. I had a few drinks throughout the night to deal with my mother, and before we knew it, it was 10 p.m. and time to head back to the Airbnb. We pulled up to our rental. Now each complex has 4 apartments, 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top, and the one we were staying in was on the top left. However, when we pulled up, we could see a small figure standing in between some curtains in the window of the apartment on the top right. Instantly, I felt weird. Who just stares out their window like that boyfriend parked? And as I got out, I looked up again, and she was still there, still staring at us as we both walked towards the entry door. I could make out her features. You know how some people just have that crazy look to them? This was her mangled brown hair and wide open eyes. She had to be at least 60 or 70, and this frown she had, I've never seen someone so angry. My boyfriend puts the key in the door, and we enter, and not to my surprise, we see her standing at the top of the stairs. He says nothing, Ban's there watching us. He's very small and round, but the way she was standing, you could see her arms and legs were very thin. My boyfriend and I looked at each other for a second, and then we began to make our way up. We walked up while she stared us down, but to my amazement, she didn't say anything. Rather, she just stared at us with her creepy eyes. Kept looking back as my boyfriend entered the code and we hurried into the apartment. What the hell was that? My boyfriend said, softly looking at me confused. I shook my head as I was just glad she didn't try to talk to us. Nothing weird happened the rest of the night until we heard banging on the front door. I shot up from bed just to find that my boyfriend was already awake. Banging was nonstop for maybe a minute or two until it suddenly went silent. I looked at my phone and it was nearly 4 a.m. Who would be banging on the door? At this time, my boyfriend walked towards the door, whispering to me that he was going to look out the peephole to see who was there. I trailed behind him slowly as he inspected. He looked back at me and was clearly confused. He then opened the door a little to look around, and I heard him gasp what I whispered and slowly stepped towards him. Laying on the welcome mat outside the door. Was he dead rats? They looked completely gutted, with only one of them still having their head attached. He closed the door, and we both agreed to contact the host later that day. I tried my best to sleep, but the images of those rats kept replaying in my mind. After a while, I looked at my phone, and it was 6:30. Accepting the fact that I won't be able to get any sleep, I got up to make coffee, and as I did, I heard the neighbor's door slam shut. I looked out the kitchen window, which overlooks the parking lot, and hopes to get a glimpse of the crazy lady. And there she was, standing and staring at our parked car, not even looking at what was inside. She was just staring at it. She looked so focused on her car for the longest time, and then she slowly turned her head to look directly at me. I jumped back a little bit, and immediately heard her shriek this horrible blood-curdling shriek like she was being attacked. My boyfriend ran out of the bedroom, obviously alarmed, and we both looked out the window again. The neighbor was standing there holding her head, screaming at the driver's side window, grabbed the top of the car and started banging her ahead, screaming things like they never leave, when will they leave, and why do they keep coming? I started recording for insurance purposes, and my boyfriend called the police and then the host. By the time the police had shown up, she was laying on the ground next to her car, which had very little damage considering what we just witnessed. The host profusely apologized and said that this had never happened before and refunded our entire trip. We got to see the lady taken away in handcuffs, though it took her a while to comply. We never found out what was wrong with her. But my theory is something just snapped and we just happened to be the ones that were there when it happened. But I do know that you should take every review into consideration when booking an Airbnb, every single one.